Hello there and welcome to another video focusing on English Language Paper 1, Question 5. As always, we start by looking at the question overview to make sure that we are not only smart, but we are exam smart. And we're going to be focusing on Question 5 again today. Remember, 40 marks for this question. It is worth the same amount of marks as questions 1 to 4 put together. And you have 45 minutes for this, but this is divided up. 10 minutes for planning, 30 minutes for writing, and 5 minutes for checking things through at the end. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. But equally, if you don't check things through at the end, you might have made some sloppy mistakes that you need to make sure you're checking. You must make sure you follow this if you're aiming for those grade 4 and grade 5. So a couple of quick recap questions from what you've done in class to make sure that you have a good understanding for this question. Pause the video now to have a go at answering these questions. So, as we've said, dividing up the time, 10 minutes planning, 30 minutes writing, 5 minutes checking. 3 different types of punctuation you could use: full stop, comma, bracket, semicolon, ellipses, rules of dialogue as well. How many marks is it worth? 40 marks. Check that you got it right. Tick that if you did, and well done for that. So we are going to be focusing today on the ideas of description rather than narrative, because remember, for this question you have a choice of 2. It will probably be either a narrative, write part of a story, or it might be write a description as based on a picture. And this video is going to give you 3 tips which are likely to be able to help you with the idea of description as well. Show me, don't tell me, a strong structure, and zooming in on specific details. So you will see here 2 different paragraphs that you might see in a descriptive piece. Pause the video so you can read through both of these and see which one you think is telling and see which one you think is showing me description. Which one is telling me? Which one is showing me? So the answer, you will see that the first one is telling me in a description, but the second one is showing me. And the difference between the 2 is as follows. Telling me uses phrases like it was, there was, I could hear, I could smell. You are simply telling me what has happened, almost like you're summarizing a story for me. If you want to be aiming for a grade 4 or a grade 5, that is not a strong way to go about your description. Instead, you want to show me instead. What this paragraph does is exactly the same in terms of the content. A foggy day outside, but instead of just telling me it was foggy, a blanket of dense, opaque fog hovers low. So do you see the difference? We are not simply declaring and telling me, we're showing me that there are some details with this. It is great to be using the 5 senses, smell, touch, taste, etc. But actually, rather than could hear something, talk about the way the sound affects your ears. Talk about the way taste invades your mouth. That is going to make a difference between a grade 3 and a grade 4 and a grade 5. So let's go through an example with this. Telling me I was really scared, but I don't want you to tell me that. For a grade 4 or 5, you need to show me that. And in order to show me, you need to show me, what does your body do in this situation? So when you're scared, you might say, rather than saying I was scared, my heart pounded in my chest as sweat droplets formed on my forehead. You're saying the same thing, but you're showing me that you're scared rather than telling me. Notice in this example, I haven't even used the word scared, but I should be able to understand that's the emotion you feel. 3 examples here. What I would like you to do, pause the video now to come up with an example where, if I've told it, can you show me? Or if you show me, what was the original tell me? So here are some examples that you could have written. I was excited. That's telling me as you'll see from I was, but instead you could show me. An immense smile spread across my face as I danced around the room gleefully, full of happiness. That's the one thing that you're really looking for. You're looking for the sense of showing me what your body is doing rather than telling me. Here, this is a lovely phrase that we've got for showing. The pungent aroma, pungent, very strong smell of garbage invaded my nostrils, causing me to gag violently. That's the showing. A telling, there was a terrible smell. I could smell something bad. This is the sort of answer that we want to see. Finally, rather than there was a dark figure, try and avoid using the phrase there was. A dark figure arose suddenly from the bushes, blocking out all light. Any of these examples will be really great to see in your writing. So if you like any of them, do magpie them and put them in your own writing as well. So we've talked about showing and not telling. The next, we need to think about a strong structure we could put in place for description. So let's imagine this is the question that you have. Write a description suggested by this picture. And I suggest you take the following 5 steps in order for you to have an effective answer for this. Your first step is you're going to have a bit of an introduction. It's almost best to imagine that you have walked around the corner and seen this picture in front of you. You've seen this scene occurring before your eyes. An introduction should be filled with a sense of confusion. You're trying to understand your surroundings. You realize you're in a kitchen, but suddenly there's something not quite right. We've reached what we call a disequilibrium, to use a word from the structure idea. So the introduction should think about the bigger picture. Tell me where we are, show me where we are, and give me a little bit about the atmosphere that we have to begin with. Your next 3 paragraphs should really zoom in on specific details. And what I suggest you do in the exam paper is you box up the image for 3 particular things that you could focus on. So you could focus on the beer bottles for 1. The development, you could focus on the chocolate cake. You could focus on, for a 3rd one, the facial expressions for this. So those are 3 different images that you could zoom in on in lots of detail. Think about all the different things that we could do with that there. The crucial thing to say about that is that you need to use your imagination. This question, the crucial word is suggested. You are not going to get marks by writing exactly what you see in this picture. So therefore, you need to use your imagination. If you are to zoom in on the bread, this bread looks perfectly fine. But what could you focus on in the bread? Perhaps there's a little bit of mold there. Perhaps you could talk about the crumbs. Perhaps this woman has torn it out and left some bite marks in there. Perhaps if you're focusing on the apple, there's a maggot on it. Perhaps there's a water droplet moving down it. Perhaps you could talk about the light reflecting off it. When we're zooming in on the details, you don't need to be accurate with the picture. You need to be creative with this. So we have our introduction where we're setting things up. We're zooming in on 3 particular details. And then finally, we're going to zoom out again to understand exactly what's going on. Because we've suggested at the start, we're confused. We're going to zoom in on something to try to understand. Zoom in on something else to try to understand. Zoom in again. And then we're going to look back at the bigger picture and think about the atmosphere. Do we realize who she is? What she's suddenly doing? Why is she doing this? Try and think about imagination coming from that. So to answer the question that lots of students ask, how many paragraphs you should write, the expectation is you should write again 7 paragraphs. 1 for each of these points, which is 5. And then as we've suggested previously, 2 single line paragraphs. Maybe a single line paragraph to start and a single line paragraph to end it as well. So 7 paragraphs in total, focusing on these things. I suggest you pause the video now so you can plan a structure and what you're going to focus on in this particular image. So here's an example of a sample introduction. Remember, an introduction is not just one sentence. An introduction might cover a number of things. Have a read of this, pause the video, and then we can deconstruct exactly what's gone on here. So, as we've talked about previously, starting your answer with a single line paragraph rhetorical question, it hooks the reader in, and it's using your paragraph and your structuring effectively for that. As we've talked about with our introduction, we want to create a bit of a sense of confusion. You've just seen and walked into this scene. What on earth is going on? An unusual chill slithered down my spine. I've shown you that I'm nervous, but I haven't told you I was nervous. I expected to be embraced by a blanket of opaqueness, saying you expected it to be dark in this kitchen, but I was bathed in the harsh glow of a flickering yellow haze. So again, using our personification effectively for our ideas. Instead of the deafening silence of twilight, the dulcet tones, the sweet tones of the fridge's buzz lingered in my ear. We have shown the sound rather than told it to me. My mind tried in vain to rationalize what stood before me. You're trying to work out what happens. This is a nice sentence to be able to use at the end of your introduction because you're trying to understand what's going on. Because then what the following paragraph, the start, does, it enables you to zoom in on one thing in particular. I suggest you pause the video now to write down any words or phrases that you like the sound of and want to use, or look up in the dictionary any words that you don't know the meaning of. So, the third thing we're going to look at, having looked at showing, not telling, and a good structure to use, is how to effectively zoom in. As I've said before, it's not about accuracy, it's about creativity. So let's imagine that we're going to zoom in on this cake. Here are some questions you could consider when trying to conjure the image of a cake. Think about all the different elements that we might want to be thinking about. What is actually on the cake? What does it physically look like? How does it smell? Where is it? What type of plate is it on? How does the cake feel to the touch? How does the cake make you act? So a combination when zooming in on the senses, if there's a smell, if there's a taste, if there's a touch associated with it, but also your emotional reaction to it and what it physically looks like. Remember, all of those things we're trying to show and not tell. All of those questions would form the basis for one paragraph zooming in. I suggest you pause the video now and answer those questions. So you now need to think how this is going to look all together. All I've done in this paragraph is taken the questions and the answers for this and brought these all together. Pause the video now to have a read of this paragraph and then we will deconstruct it. So you've got looking closer. We're signposting that we're zooming in on these ideas. I looked closer at the opaque chocolate delight that stood before me. Remember thinking about, we don't always want to use the word cake because if we continuously use that word, we're not showing that variety of vocabulary. The immense aroma of chocolate tickled my nostrils. We're showing the senses, we're not telling them. We've also not just said it was on a plate. You've personified it, standing tall atop beautiful china. The stunning shimmer of the icing juxtaposed beautifully to the pale plate beneath. Notice, juxtapose is a word we might have commonly used in our analysis for question 2 or question 4, or for literature, but you can put that in your creative writing if you think it fits. The springy sponge bounced under the pressure of my precious silverware. Notice things like alliteration, expanding our sentences for that. And notice in our final sentence, we've used a semicolon. My mouth was watering uncontrollably. However, I had to resist. So in this paragraph, we've zoomed in on all of these questions. We haven't done any telling. We've shown, but we've also used a range of punctuation. I suggest you pause the video now to write down any particular words or phrases you like the look of, and look up any words in a dictionary that you don't understand. So, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. Really important to recap on the ideas of description. Make sure that you are showing me, not telling me, that you follow our strong structure with 5 paragraphs and 2 single-line paragraphs, making 7 paragraphs in total, and that you zoom in effectively on key details. It's not about accuracy for description, it's about the creativity that comes with it. Please do make sure that you're passing on any work to myself or to your teacher for feedback. I look forward to seeing what you're going to create. Thank you very much.